Hello class, today we're going to talk about addition of integers. So let's move right on into our lesson. We need to remember what integers are. Integers are nothing but the set of whole numbers and their opposites. So with integers, we know that opposites are the numbers that are the same distance from zero on a number line. So -4 and +4 are what we would call opposites of each other. Okay, we also know the integers, again, like we just talked about, are the whole numbers and their opposites. And yesterday we did talk about the absolute value. So let's move on into our lesson for today. Okay, today we're talking about adding integers. So one of the concepts that you do need to remember and do need to know about adding integers is what we call a zero pair. And in 7th and 8th grade, one of the things that we use to help us understand the process of adding or subtracting integers is using what we call two-color counters. Now, in this particular program I'm using, I don't have the capability of pulling out the red and yellow chips that you see there on the left, so I'm just going to use plus and minus whenever we're dealing with that. So I need you to understand what a zero pair is. A zero pair is a pair of red and yellow counters that represent the number 0. So that means I would have one positive and one negative, and that represents a 0. Because we know that if I were to do this on a number line, and I start here at 0, if I were to move one space to the right, that represents a positive. And if I move one space back to the left, that represents the negative. So where am I back at? I'm back at 0. And that's why we call that a zero pair. Now again, this lesson is going to be a little bit of a review of what we talked about last year, but I got to make sure everybody is on the same page before we get into the 8th grade standards. Okay, so no matter how many pluses we have, if I have the same number of negatives, this represents a 0, this represents a 0, 0, 0. So the entire value is 0. Okay, so we have to understand that concept. It's very important. So let's move on into addition. And today we are only going to talk about addition. Tomorrow we'll talk about subtraction. Okay, so we've got a problem here, 5 plus 3. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually look at these in terms of using those counters. And I want to show you how to build the model of each one of them. Now, we're not going to do all of them, but we're going to do some of them. Okay, so here are these problems. So let's find out what you remember. We got 5 plus 3. Well, if I've got 5 plus 3, that basically means that if I were to look at this in terms of these integer chips, these color counters, I would have 5 pluses, and I'm adding to that 3 more. So what do I have altogether? I have positive 8 altogether. Now in the next problem, we got -3 plus -4. So we do the same exact thing, it's just with negatives. So here I've got 3 negatives. I've got 4 more negatives, and I'm adding to that. How many negatives do I have altogether? I've got 7 negatives. Now what if I have signs of different value? Okay, or numbers of different signs. So I got -5, so that means I've got 5 negatives, and I've got 7 positives. So there we go. Now what happens when I have this positive and negative together? Well, that makes a 0. 0, 0, 0, 0. And what I have left when I take out all the zero pairs is just a positive 2. Okay, so how did I get 2 out of that? Well, the only way I can see of getting 2 is take 7, take away 5, and I end up with 2. Well, that's what we're really doing with these zero pairs. We're taking them away. Okay, so when we have numbers of different signs, we're really going to subtract our numbers and then just take the sign of the number that has more, has the bigger number of pluses or minuses. So if we look at this last one here, that means we've got 4 negatives, I've got 6 positives, and then I've got 3 more negatives. So here's a 0 and a 0 and a 0 and a 0, 0, 0. And what do I have left? I've got 1 negative. So that's basically what we're looking at when we're adding integers together, is we're building the problem. Okay, so what I want you to notice on this page is when I have signs that are alike, I have positive and positive, I just add the numbers together and I get more positives. When I have negative and negative, I add the numbers together and I get more negatives. Now when I have signs of different, or numbers of different values, of both one positive, one negative, we're going to subtract our numbers, and whichever number is farthest from 0, or whichever number has what we call the greater absolute value, that's the sign of the number I'm going to take. So in this one right here, I had 5 negatives, which zapped out 5 of the positives out of the 7, and I've only got 2 positives left. When we get down to this last problem, we had 4 negatives, and we had 3 more negatives because we know we could put those 2 numbers together because it's all addition with that thing we talked about last week called the commutative property of addition, where I could take that -4 and that -3 and put those together to give me a -7, and then I'm going to add that 6 to it, which then gives me that -1 that we have there at the top. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. Now, if you were to look at these in terms of a number line, we're doing the same exact thing. It's just we look for directions. So if I had this 5 plus 3, that basically means on this number line, I'm going to go out 5, and then I'm going to go out 3 more. And where would I end up at? I'd end up at 8. Okay, if I had the -3 and the -4, that means I'm going to go left 3, and then I'm going to go left 4 more, which will get me to the -7. Now, if I have the 5 at -5 plus 7, that means I'm going to go left 5, and then I'm going to go right 7, which gets me to that 2 that's on this number line up here. So that's how we model that using a number line. Now, what I need you to know is just the procedures. We're beyond just using models, and we just need to, if when I give you a problem, you'll be able to see the numbers and know what to do. So here's our procedure for adding integers. If your signs are alike, I've got a positive and a positive, you're going to add your numbers, or a negative and negative, you're going to add your numbers. 5 plus 3 is 8, 4 plus 9 is 13, and you're going to keep the sign of the problem. In this case, I've got positive, positive, so my 8 is positive. In the second question, I've got negative, negative, so my answer is negative. Now, the hard part to remember is if your signs are different, in other words, one's positive, one's negative, no matter which order they come at you. Okay, we're going to subtract our numbers. So we're going to take the bigger looking one, whatever the bigger looking one is, whichever one has what we call the greater absolute value, and we're going to subtract the smaller absolute value number from it. Okay, so in this first question down below, I'm going to do 6 take away 4, which gives me 2. Now, which one of those 2 numbers has the greater absolute value? The 6 does, so what kind of 6 is that? It's positive, so your answer is positive 2. Now, this one right here, I'm going to do 9 minus 5, and I'm going to get 4. Okay, but which one of these 2 numbers, the 5 or the -9, has the greater absolute value? The -9 does, so that's why your answer is -4. So if your signs are different, you're going to subtract your numbers and take the sign of the number with the greater absolute value. And that's what we do for addition. So let's do a few more questions, and then we'll be ready for our assignment. Okay, so this first one, you got -25 plus 17. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, are my signs alike? Are they different? Well, they're different. So what does it say to do when they're different? Signs are different. Subtract your numbers and take the sign of the number with the greater absolute value. So I'm going to do 25 take away 17. So 25 take away 17 should give me an 8. Now, which one of those 2 numbers is going to be farthest from 0? Which one would have the greater absolute value? The -25, so it's a -8. Do the same thing on the next one. -12 plus -18. Again, my signs are different. So what are we going to do? We're going to subtract my numbers. So we do the bigger looking one, 18, take away 12. We're going to get a 6 from that. Now, which one of those 2 numbers, the -12 or the 18, will have the greater absolute value? The 18, so that means it's a positive 6, or just plain old 6. Now, -14 plus -23. In this particular problem, my signs are alike. So what does it say that we're going to do? My signs are alike. You're going to add your numbers and keep the sign of the problem. So we're going to do 14 plus 23, which will give us 37. And because we've got a negative here and a negative here, my answer is going to be more negative, -37. Okay? So what if I gave you one that had multiple numbers on it like this? Well, one of the things that I do is I'm going to take all my positives and put them together. Then I'm going to take all my negatives and put them together. And then I'm going to do one subtraction problem at the end. Okay, so in this one, my 14 doesn't have anything that can pair with it, so I'm just going to write the 14 down. Plus, well, this -19 has another -7 here that could go with it. So I'm going to add those 2 together to get -26. And now my signs are different, so I'm going to do 26 take away 14. That's going to give me 12. And now which one of those 2 numbers, the 14 or the -26, has the greater absolute value? The -26. So my answer is going to be a -12. Okay? So really, in essence, what we're doing is two basic steps. If your signs are alike, positive, positive, or negative, negative, you're going to add your numbers and keep the sign of the problem. If your signs are different, you're going to subtract your numbers and take the sign of the number with the greater absolute value. Now, if you do have multiple numbers, well, what you do is you take all your positive numbers and put them together. Take all of your negative numbers and put them together, and then just do one subtraction problem because you will have one positive and one negative. Signs are different, so we subtract our numbers and take the sign of the number with a greater absolute value. Now, what I'd like for you to do for your assignment is just a simple little thing right here. Now, we're only doing the addition portion, so it says add and subtract integers review. We'll do the subtraction part tomorrow. So without using a calculator, I would like for you to answer each of these questions. So until next time, I'll talk to you later.